New York City had a total upset. The Democratic mayoral candidate now for the party is a relatively young Zoran Mamdani, 33 years old. Few had heard of him a year ago. His progressive policies powered him to take on Andrew Cuomo and win, a name that in New York and around the country is known far more than his. The message, though, was laser focused on kitchen table priorities, affordability, and the kind of progressive populism which Democrats have sometimes lost sight of, and it worked.
We live in the most expensive city in the United States of America. It's also the wealthiest city in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, and yet 1 in 4 New Yorkers are living in poverty. City-run grocery stores, I've proposed a pilot program of 1 store in each borough. I'm going to freeze the rent for more than 2 million rent-stabilized tenants, taking the slowest buses in the nation, making them fast and free, and delivering universal child care.
There is the Eric Adams of it all, the current mayor, who was so unpopular in the party after a lot of things that he did and what happened that he's just running as an independent. But there's this other wrinkle you heard Mamdani mention there. He's on the Democratic Party ticket, but he, like AOC, is more of a democratic socialist, which deals with decentralized socialist economic systems within a democracy. It's a system where ordinary people, according to its advocates, will have a real voice in workplaces, neighborhoods, and society. That's how the DSA puts it, and collectively own the economic drivers which dominate our lives today. That includes, quote, energy production, transportation. They call it a democracy powered by everyday people. And while this was once considered far left of mainstream Democratic politics and something that was not common to run on in a big race, say a big city or statewide, it has proven to be more and more appealing. You can think of Bernie Sanders or AOC. You can also think on the negative side of the frustration with a cruel capitalism that continues to grind on with billionaires in the sky and wasting their money while a lot of people suffer. Now, I am describing that side. There is another side. Many people view this as unworkable or, frankly, unfair. Critics say that this style of democratic socialism, if you actually instituted it, particularly in a big city like New York, which has a lot of challenges, problems, housing issues, Wall Street, its headquarters, that you will end up potentially doing more harm than good.
He ran a campaign on affordability where none of the things he promised can happen realistically in the way that he promised them.
I think there's a question about whether or not he can deliver affordability.
Are you okay with any of this, Richard, or you think most of this ultimately won't work?
Well, let's go through it very quickly. I think freezing rent is going to increase the housing affordability issues because you will get less housing. I think the buses, again, it's going to cost probably another $800 million to $1 billion. I'm not quite sure that the answer to that is to effectively pass that cost on to all New Yorkers, because remember, that's a state issue with the MTA. In terms of free childcare, and I think he's proposing it through age 6, I think the $8 billion is probably on the low side. I think that could be a very large expense in the budget. And we have to figure out how we're going to pay for all this. And it's very easy to say.
Let me bring in Faz. I get that. That makes sense. Faz?
We're the richest in the richest country in the history of the world, the richest city in the richest country. I think we've got some money. And the question is whether that money is doing anything to improve the standard of living for people who are trying to afford a place to live, whether they can afford to transport themselves to their jobs, whether they can afford childcare. So I would agree. I mean, there's probably a lot of areas of agreement, I assume Richard and I could find around building affordable housing and the need to change some of the zoning and conversions of units. My point would just be that at the end of the day, the way we measure these outcomes, which, by the way, have been worse and worse outcomes, so you have to start with that. I mean, are we starting with the premise that for the past 30 or 40 years, things have gotten worse for working class New Yorkers? It is more unaffordable. So if you start with that premise, we can't stay status quo.
I don't think New York residents are undertaxed. I'll start from that premise. And I also think at some point, we don't know what that is, when you raise taxes beyond a certain point, moving jobs and people moving outside of the city, which they can easily do, is going to have a real risk of exodus and net loss of tax revenue. Now, we also have to look at where we are. Now, we have the big, beautiful bill, and no one really knows what impact that's going to have on revenues coming in from the federal government. New York State has its own issues with respect to the budget. healthcare outside of New York City is a real crisis in New York State because of the expense and the loss of the tax base upstate. So at this point in time, is this really the time for New York City to be taking on more municipal obligations? I think
and
that is very concerning.
Let me take that to Faz and put up the maps of some of the other countries, because most of our viewers are all over the country, not in New York. And the Democratic Party, is debating this at an AOC Bernie level outside of New York. And when you look at the economic growth there, Faz, what is the core message, do you think, of folks like Sanders or Mamdani if this were nationalized for America, that we could have decent growth like these countries and a more livable life? How would you present it to the rest of the country?
Well, first, I mean, very basically, we need to raise the living wage, the minimum wage to a living wage. That seems very core, that people should be able to, if they're going to be working class people, they should be able to get by, if they're going to be able to afford a place to live, afford childcare. Those price points of these things has become unaffordable in a city that's dominated by greater concentration of the elite. And if you allow the system, as you know, we're talking about here, the fear that the billionaire class could flee the city. Well, what about the millions and millions of people who need to live in the city? That's the orientation we want to start with. Billionaires have already fled New York City. If you look under Mayor Adams, about $9 to $10 billion have left the city. Now the question is, like, can we afford to bring the vibrancy of New York City back such that it doesn't just become a city of extreme wealth and the people who are the very elite?
Pat Ryan and Tom Suozzi are also going to be very concerned if he gets elected. And I also think it's a gift to Nick LaLota and Mike Lawler, who will probably go from competitive districts to very safe seats. This is a gift to the National Republicans on a silver platter.
Faz.
Politically, I hope that for all the wobbly Democrats out there, you see that Zoran is bringing into the Democratic tent a whole hell of a lot of people who didn't vote in 2024. He's exciting people, young people in particular. He's expanding the opportunity of Democrats to win if you give him a shot. Zoran is a very talented and smart person. He has a view of the political economy that understands the role of the state has to address the condition of working class people. But he's somebody to be reasoned with, to talk to. And I think the more we demonize and we play scare tactics, all we do is lend less credibility that the Democratic Party can stand up to powerful elites for working class people. Zoran's doing it. I hope more people give him a chance to succeed.